It is time for the first one from every team video of the brand new season. Originally, I was going to do grading every team's start to the season, but I still feel like it's a little bit too early for that because so many things are going to change over the next months, even weeks. So instead of that, in this video, I'm just going to give you guys my first impressions on every team to start this season. Not going to be giving them a grade or anything like that. Just going to go over some things that I've noticed or some things that I want to talk about in regards to every single team. And there isn't really much else to say other than that. This should be a really long video, so let's not waste any time and get started. We usually go in just normal alphabetical order, so I'll change it up today and we'll go in reverse alphabetical order, starting off with the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have been pretty solid so far to start the season. They do currently occupy one of the top 3 spots in the Central Division. It appears Connor Hellebuyck is back to playing at a Vezina level, which is really good for them. One guy I've been a little bit surprised with on that team in a bad way, Kyle Connor, only 1 goal so far through 9 games, which is definitely not very Kyle Connor-like. This is a guy who's one of the absolute best goal scorers in the league, one of the most lethal finishers in the league. I expected him to score 50 plus this year, so I'm sure the Winnipeg Jets are hoping he can get it going and start finding the back of the net here soon. The Washington Capitals, really mediocre start to the season for them. They are currently on the outside looking in terms of the playoff race. I feel like a lot of people did expect them to get off to a slow start though, because they're without Tom Wilson and Nicholas Backstrom right now. Connor Brown also just went down. He's going to be out long term, so that's unfortunate news. They are getting good goaltending from both Darcy Kemper and Charlie Lindgren. It's kind of the offense that has been holding them back. They don't have anybody currently that's at or above a point per game. Kuznetsov is struggling, Mantha is struggling, so definitely not an ideal start to the season for the Capitals. I wouldn't worry about them quite yet. I still think they're probably going to figure things out once guys start to come back from injury. This is a team that I do still expect to make the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights, this team is an absolute wagon and proving a lot of doubters wrong. The one question that most people had around this team heading into the season was goaltending, with Robin Lehner expected to miss the entire season. How is a tandem of Thompson and Hill going to hold up? Well, those guys haven't just been good enough, they have actually been elite. Both Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson are big reasons why Vegas is currently where they are with a 9-2 record. Logan Thompson's currently rocking a .938 save percentage in 7 games, and Aiden Hill has a .940. Jack Eichel looks amazing. He's back to producing at an elite level. This team looks amazing. I think they're going to make a lot of noise in the Western Conference this year and remind people just how good and how deep they really are after having a real down year last season. The Vancouver Canucks currently dead last in the entire league. I already made a whole video about the Vancouver Canucks, but that's when they were winless. They did pick up their first couple wins of the season. That being said, this team still does not look good. They definitely don't look like a team, and they aren't giving off the vibes of a team that is going to be able to dig themselves out of this early season hole. So unfortunately, I do think it is going to be a pretty long year for the Canucks and their fan base, but hey, good news is they still have their first round pick, and if there's any year to be bad, it's this one. The Toronto Maple Leafs, definitely a really polarizing team early on in the season. They're over 500 right now, 5-4-2, but given the way that the media and their fans are treating them right now, you think they're like dead last in the league. They had a much needed bounce back win last night against the Philadelphia Flyers. They not only beat Philadelphia, but they won in dominant fashion, as you would expect a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs to do over a team like Philadelphia. So we'll see if that win last night can kind of kickstart a little hot streak for them. But Steve Dangle, I'm sure you all know him. He seems pretty adamant on being done with this core. He thinks they need to make a change. I'm interested to hear what other Leafs fans feel about that. Do you think it's time to make a change? The Tampa Bay Lightning, what do we even say about them at this point? Like, they're just kind of coasting along, quietly have a 6-4 record. They're currently sitting in a playoff spot. I expect it to stay that way for the remainder of the season. All of their, big core guys are dominating, putting up fantastic individual numbers like usual. I honestly kind of get the feeling that Tampa Bay is being slept on a little bit, even though they've been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, but I believe they have a really strong chance of making it to 4 straight. I think they're easily one of the best teams in the East still. Next, we have the St. Louis Blues. After starting the season 3-0, they have looked terrible ever since. They've lost 5 straight, all of which have came in regulation, and this was a team that I was actually really high on coming into the season. My one worry was goaltending. I didn't know how they would fare after losing Ville Husso. Would Jordan Binnington be able to carry a lot of the load through the regular season? And so far, Jordan Binnington, his numbers are not great at all. Thomas Greiss is actually putting up better individual numbers than Binnington, which is really surprising to me as a Red Wings fan. Christ was real shaky over the past couple of years. I don't think it's panic time just yet in St. Louis, but it's never a good sign when your general manager addresses the media this early on in the season, and Doug Armstrong has already done that, so I am really interested to see how the Blues are going to bounce back and how they play over these next couple of weeks. The Seattle Kraken, it's night and day the difference of this team from last season to this season. They're actually currently occupying the 3rd spot in the Pacific Division. Matty Beniers looks just as good as advertised. He's probably going to be in the Calder conversation all year long. Their big free agent signing in the offseason, Andre Burakovsky, he's top 3 on the team in scoring, and they're doing this while still not getting great goaltending, which was, a big story last season. It's kind of the offense that's carrying Seattle this year. They're top 10 in the league in terms of goals for per game. They're top 10 in the league in power play percentage, so if their goaltending can step it up, maybe this is the team that can push for a playoff spot all year long. The San Jose Sharks, things are going about as everybody expected for them. They are one of the worst teams in the league. It's looking like they're going to be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, but I will say it is very fun to see Erik Karlsson looking like prime Erik Karlsson again. The dude has 9 goals already in 12 games. Just an absolutely monstrous start to the season for him. I love me some Erik Karlsson, so I'm really hoping he keeps this up all season long and potentially finishes as a Norris finalist, maybe even wins it. The Pittsburgh Penguins, probably the coldest team in the NHL right now. After starting pretty good, they have now lost 6 games in a row, including a game last night against Buffalo where they held the lead for the majority of that game, but then ended up blowing it late and losing by 3. Offensively, this team has been fine. Crosby, Malkin, Rust, Gensel, all those guys look great. It's the defense and goaltending that really has been holding them back so far this season. They're one of the worst teams in the league in terms of goals against per game. Their penalty kill has been really bad as well. So in order for them to, get out of the slump, get their season back on track, they definitely need to tighten things up defensively and get a little bit better goaltending from both Jarry and DeSmith. The Philadelphia Flyers are next. Definitely one of the bigger surprises so far to start this season. This is a team that everybody, including myself, figured would be, bottom 3 in the league at best, just based on the talent on this roster, how many guys they're going to be missing long term due to injury. But John Tortorella has this team buzzing. He has them all bought in and performing really well. Even after losing last night's game to the Maple Leafs, they currently still occupy the 2nd wildcard spot. So even though I don't expect this to keep up for the remainder of the season, it's nice to see that they didn't just roll over out of the gate when literally everybody counted them out. Next up, we have the Ottawa Senators. They started pretty well, but they've been cold lately, lost 3 in a row. It's just super unfortunate that Josh Norris had to go down with that injury that's going to keep him out likely all season. That really puts a big damper on their playoff hopes, but even with that being said, there's still a lot to like in Ottawa. Alex DeBrincat has looked good since coming over in that trade in the offseason. Giroux looks good. Shane Pinto's been one of the best rookies in the league. Their goaltending has been fine, I would say. It hasn't been good, but it's not the reason they're losing. I think it should be really good for Anton Forsberg when Cam Talbot comes back from injury and can take a little bit of the load off him, take some more starts away. The New York Rangers, this is a team that when I ranked every team on a tier list heading into the season, I ranked the New York Rangers as legit Stanley Cup contenders, and nothing that I've seen early on in the season so far makes me think any differently. I still view them as cup contenders. Their big offseason addition, Vincent Trocheck, who they signed in free agency, has been really good. They're using him in all situations, and he's performing pretty well. Artemi Panarin has been one of the absolute best players in the league so far. A lot of things are clicking for the Rangers right now. They're really fun to watch. The New York Islanders, another team that's pretty hot right now. They've won 4 games in a row. Ilya Sorokin has been lights out. He's currently rocking a .935 save percentage through 7 starts. This is a team that I would say has gotten a lot more fun to watch now that Barry Trotz is gone. That's not to say Barry Trotz is a bad coach or anything, but the new system that they're playing under their new head coach, it's a lot more, free-flowing. There's a lot more offense in there, so Matthew Barzal's game has seemed to be unlocked a little bit. Even though Barzal hasn't scored yet through 10 games, he's still a point-per-game player, so that should just tell you right there how good of a playmaker this guy is. It seems like the Islanders are back to their winning ways, and they look like a team right now that could give playoff hopeful teams and Stanley Cup hopeful teams a lot of problems. The New Jersey Devils, if you missed yesterday's video, go give that one a watch after you're done watching this. That video was on the Devils, breaking down their start to the season. After starting off 0-2 and it looked like the season was already ready to go off the rails, fans were booing Lindy Ruff and chanting "Fire Lindy." Since then, they've been one of the absolute best teams in the league. They have looked dominant. Their puck possession numbers, their shot differential is insane. It finally seems like this is truly the year that the Devils are ready to start coming out of this rebuild round the corner and be a legit threat for the playoffs. The Nashville Predators surprisingly have been one of the worst teams in the league so far. After starting 2-0, winning both Global Series games over the San Jose Sharks, they've only won 1 game since that Global Series, which is pretty crazy. That was a long time ago now. Go figure. My Vezina Trophy lottery pick, UC Saros, has really struggled to start the season. He's got a sub 900 save percentage. I also drafted him in fantasy in not one, but 2 leagues. Love that. This is a team that heading into the season, I did predict to make the playoffs, and I think it's safe to say I don't feel very confident in that prediction anymore whatsoever. The Montreal Canadiens, they've been a middle of a pack team to start this season. They currently have a 5-5 record, and a lot of Habs fans I've talked to are not happy about that. They actually want this team to be losing because this is a team that's supposed to be going after Connor Bedard. And even though ultimately I do think that's what'll happen, I think it's nice to see this team being competitive out of the gate. This team that's led by young guys like Suzuki and Caulfield who are performing fantastic. There's just a lot of bright spots in Montreal. Kirby Dach looks good. Arbor Xhekaj has been a lot of fun to start this season. Rookie defenseman who's quickly became not just a fan favorite in Montreal, but the entire league. The Minnesota Wild, after starting the season miserably, what was it? They allowed like 14 goals through their first 2 games or something crazy like that, but they've quickly turned it around since then. They're already back up over 500 with a record of 5-4-1. They're currently 3rd in the Central. The one thing that I would be kind of concerned about if I was a Wild fan is the backup goaltending position. Philip Gustafsson is 0-3 all regulation losses with a sub 900 save percentage and a goals against average that's, nearing 4. Marc-Andre Fleury, although his stats don't look great because they kind of got absolutely blown up in those first 2 games, he's been fine since then. He's got a record of 5-1-1 still. Matthew Boldy is quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch and just one of my favorite players in the league. The dude is a beast, and I think he's going to be one of the best wingers in the league for a very long time. The Los Angeles Kings, a team that I was pretty high on heading into the season, they've been mediocre so far, a 6-6 record. Offensively, they're getting nice production from guys like Kevin Fiala and Gabriel Velarde, who I feel like is one of the most surprising players to start out this season. He's got 13 points in 12 games. Their goaltending really hasn't been great, which has kind of held them back a little bit, and it's different from previous years where like 2 years ago, Cal Peterson was good and Quick was bad, and then last season, Quick was fine and Peterson was bad, and now this season so far, they've both been bad, so that's not a good sign. Hopefully one of those guys are going to be able to turn it around and kind of take the reins as the starter and a guy that the Kings can trust. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers, the President's Trophy winners from last season. I would say it's been a disappointing start to the season for them, even though they are over 500, only 5-4-1. You can tell Alexander Barkov is still trying to adjust to playing without Jonathan Huberdeau. The Aaron Ekblad injury has obviously really hurt this team. That was one thing I said heading into the season. If Ekblad goes down with an injury, then that defense is going to look terrible, and that is exactly what's happened so far. Bobrovsky and Knight, and neither of those guys have been too sharp either, so I wouldn't be concerned just yet if I was a Panthers fan. I do feel like Bob and Knight are going to be better. They showed they can be last season, and then Ekblad's going to come back eventually. I think Barkov's going to get going, so I think they're going to be fine, but this is a team that I definitely feel like is a lot less dangerous than they were last year, and they're not near as close to being a legit cup contender as they were last year. Next up, we have the Oilers, one of the hottest teams in the league right now, winners of their last 5. Like, just when you think Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you can throw him in here too, just when you think those guys can't surprise you anymore or get any better, they get better. Like 21 points already for Draisaitl in 10 games, 22 for McDavid, 11 which of those points are goals. McDavid looks like he wants to win the first rocket of his career, and he's well on his way to doing that. Stuart Skinner has been a big bright spot for this team. For as much as Jack Campbell has struggled to kind of adapt to playing with the Edmonton Oilers, Stuart Skinner has been great in the games he's appeared in, and something that the Oilers are getting this year that, was always such a big question mark for them in McDavid's early years in Edmonton is they're getting depth scoring. Zach Hyman, Evander Kane, Nugent Hopkins, those guys are all over a point per game as well. So things are going pretty well right now in Edmonton, and I definitely think this is a team that should be a legit threat to come out of the Western Conference just like they were last year. Moving on now to the Red Wings, a pretty up and down year for them so far already. They are currently over 500, 4-3-2. There's bright spots for sure. Ville Husso looks good. Kubalik has been one of the biggest steals of the offseason so far in my eyes. Same goes for Olli Mata. One thing that is definitely concerning to me though as a Red Wings fan is like last year they just got blown out way too many times. It seemed like they gave up in games way too many times, and that's something they needed to eliminate, and already this season they've been blown out like 3 times. 3 times already where they've just let games get away from them, and it looks like they kind of just, turn it in and are ready for the game to be over, which isn't a good sign. I hope Derek Lalonde and the team can get that figured out, but overall I would say I'm pleased with the start to the season. It's been about what I expected them to be, like a middle of the pack team, and they're doing it without Vrana Bertuzzi right now. Sungfist is out as well, and they've been without Rasmussen for the past 2 games, so they're putting up decent results all things considered. The Dallas Stars, a team that I wasn't really high on heading into the season, but for the expectations that I had for them, they're definitely overachieving. They've looked really good. Jake Ottinger, before going down with that injury, looked like he was well on his way to having a Vezina caliber season. His stats look video game like. Robertson and Hintz have been really good. Tyler Seguin looks the best he's looked in a couple of seasons. Mason Marchment, if there's any questions about, Dallas signing him to that contract, I feel like he's already put them to bed, and he's proving he can provide, good results in a bigger role. So if I was a Stars fan right now, I would definitely be pretty happy with how the season has started. I think overall this team looks pretty good. The Blue Jackets, pretty much the opposite of what I just said about the Stars. The Blue Jackets fans are probably pretty unhappy with how the season has went so far. The Blue Jackets currently sit 31st of 32 teams in the league right now. And sure, this wasn't a team with massive expectations coming into the year, but I feel like after signing Johnny Gaudreau, everybody, including myself, at least expected them to be, competitive, be in contention for a wildcard spot, and so far that just hasn't been the case. The Colorado Avalanche, very mediocre start to the season for them, but this is kind of what I expected. I didn't expect them to come in, be in contention for the President's Trophy. This is a team that I didn't even predict to finish first in the Central. I think they're just going to kind of coast along through the regular season. Ultimately, they're going to make the playoffs. We all know that. And then that's when, they'll really turn it on and turn things up a notch. And obviously, it hasn't helped that Gabriel Landeskog has yet to play this season. If he had, I'm sure they'd be in a little bit better of a position than they are now. The Blackhawks, another team like Philadelphia, who a lot of people, including me, expected them to, be bottom 3, bottom 5 in the league at best, but they've been mediocre so far, which I would say is a little bit surprising. They're 4-4-2. They're getting some solid production from guys that they should be able to flip later on in the season at the deadline, like Max Domi, Andreas Athanasiou, Jason Dickinson, and I am still really interested to see what happens with Patrick Kane because, spoiler alert, he still looks like Patrick Kane. He's point per game through 10 games. The Carolina Hurricanes, my President's Trophy pick coming into the season, they've looked fantastic so far, 6-2-1 through 9 games. Martin Necas looks like he's really ready to have that big breakthrough season. He's actually leading the team in points right now with 13 in 9 games. Seems like he's gained a lot more trust from the coaching staff. His ice time is up there almost to 20 minutes a night, which is his career high by far. Although they aren't quite getting the elite goaltending that they got last season from Freddie Anderson, he's still been good enough for them as to where it hasn't hurt them and, made them lose more games than they should. Am I still confident in them as my President's Trophy pick? I would say yeah, at this point, I still am. The Calgary Flames, after starting the season really hot, they were 5-1 out of the gate. They've lost their past 2, so they're 5-3, 5th in the Pacific. Jonathan Huberdeau has been pretty disappointing so far. I would say he's only averaging like 20 seconds under 17 minutes a night in terms of ice time. Only has 5 points in 8 games. It's similar to what I said about Barkov. Like, I'm sure those two are still both getting used to not playing together. When you play with somebody that long, you develop the chemistry that they had. The other big offseason addition, Nazem Kadri, on the other hand, has looked fantastic. He's got 10 points through 8 games. You can tell Daryl Sutter really likes this player, trusts him in a lot of situations. I think Calgary has looked fine. This is a team that, because they had, such a seismic shift in the offseason, that I think is just going to get better and better as the season goes along, when players get more used to playing together and stuff like that, and the group just really gels. The Buffalo Sabres are up next, and this is a team that I think I actually have to make an entire video on them soon. Boy, have they looked fantastic. 7-3 right now, second in the Atlantic Division. Rasmus Dahlin is looking like a Norris candidate. Tage Thompson is proving all of his doubters wrong already about that contract extension. Victor Olofsson already has 8 goals in 10 games. It looks like he's well on his way to putting up a career high in that category. There's just a lot to like about this Buffalo team right now. Owen Power literally looks like he's been in the league for a decade. The dude's playing like over 22 minutes a night. I think it's close to 22 and a half. He's like a half a point per game player. He has been great. The Boston Bruins, another team like the Buffalo Sabres, where I may have to make an entire video on them here soon. Currently 9-1, first place in the entire league with 18 points in 10 games. The only team left with just 1 regulation loss. Basically, any questions that anybody had about this team heading into the season, Boston has already answered, and answered in a positive way. Like David Krejci, if there was any doubt that he could, be an NHL caliber player after taking a year off and playing in the Czech Republic, he's put that to bed. Krejci looks great. David Pastrnak has been one of the best players in the league. They're getting nice depth scoring all through the lineup. Brad Marchand has already came back from injury ahead of schedule and looks fantastic. So this is a real dangerous team. I would definitely label them as legit Stanley Cup contenders. They've been unreal so far. The Arizona Coyotes, currently 3-5-1 through 9 games, which actually is probably a little bit better than a lot of people would have expected. This is a team that I still fully expect to finish, bottom 2 in the league, but they've been a lot more competitive than I would have expected. Even in their losses, they've had some close ones in there. I would say it's definitely a spectacle. Even watching on TV, watching them play in Mullet Arena, I kind of like it because you can hear everything, since there isn't, 15,000 plus people in the crowd. You can really hear the conversations going on the ice. You can hear, certain fans yelling out things here and there. So it's definitely pretty entertaining to watch them play at home. And now for the final team we're going to talk about in today's video, the Anaheim Ducks have started off real rough. They were 1-6-1, but they have won 2 in a row now. Some bright spots: Troy Terry, he's proving that last season was not just, a one-year wonder, not just a fluke. He's the real deal. Doesn't seem like there's going to be any sophomore slump for Zegras. Mason McTavish, even though the goals and maybe the point totals that you would want from him aren't quite at that level, I still think he looks good. I think he looks like he belongs. So there is definitely some bright spots for the Ducks, but ultimately I do think it is going to be a pretty rough year for them. So that is going to wrap up today's video, going over my first impressions on every NHL team to start this season. As always, I want to know what you guys think, so feel free to leave any of your thoughts, comments, concerns about any team in the league down below in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see another one from every team style video in the near future, be sure to drop a like on this. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.